It's my tremendous privilege to introduce our key speakers and panelists this evening. Keerat Kaur is a Canadian-born artist and architect, licensed through the Ontario Association of Architects with Sikh Panjabi roots. Her work takes shape through the disciplines of painting, sculpture, writing, music, and architecture. She gathers inspiration from Indian philosophies to evoke themes of spirituality and fantasia. Her aesthetic lies in the realm of the surreal, merging mundane and dreamlike qualities. Kaur completed elementary and high school in French and Russian. She received her BA in 2012 from Western University and her Master in Architecture in 2016 from the University of Toronto, all the while continuing her formal training in the Drupal and Kayal schools of Indian classical music. With a passion for languages, she reads, writes, and speaks Punjabi, English, French, and Hindi. She is currently studying the ancient language of Raj through the examination of historical Sikh texts. Joining Keerat is Sally Baines, my colleague and fellow assistant curator here at Surrey Art Gallery, who is also the curator of Keerat Kaur Panjabi Garden. Please join me in welcoming them both to the stage.
Wow, what a crowd. I am so impressed. Everyone really showed up and we are packed. This is really amazing. On a Friday night, Friday evening, I just want to say a warm thank you to everybody for joining us today, and particularly Keerat as well and her exhibition, Panjabi Garden. And I hope you get time to kind of relish in the new exhibition. And also there's a few more. There's Cindy Montezuki's Autumn Strawberry and Through the Lattice, which was curated by my colleague Reese Edwards. So yeah, I hope you enjoy today's artist talk and performance. Enjoy. Okay, here we are.
Here we are. Thank you guys so much. This is like such a nice thing to see. It's like the wedding reception I ever. Thank you guys so much. Saran Jian. I've been telling Sabi this, but I really feel like this exhibition and this night, it's not just about the solo artist or the curator or the institution, but it's really about all of us, because it is for Punjabi, and it is through Punjabi as well. So I really want everyone to feel like they're a part of this. Like, I know that sounds really sappy and cheesy, but it really is for all of us. Like, it's a collective exhibition, it's a collective energy, and hopefully it's like that collective flow that we can carry into the future.
Absolutely. It's been such a treat to work with Edith, and I feel so grateful that we have, sort of stolen her from London, Ontario. Now she's here in BC. But yeah, you just have such an incredible practice, and looking forward to kind of the talk and moving forward. So let's kind of begin. So if you haven't seen the exhibition, Edith's taken a lot of her inspiration from the natural world, and I'm just curious, and if you could share with everybody today that, what was your thought process for Panjabi Garden? I know it's taken you a couple of years to kind of develop it, and why use the kind of natural themes of animals and kind of the plain creatures as well for the exhibition.
So you mentioned I grew up in London, Ontario, and I'm not sure if anyone's really familiar with that city, but when I grew up there, it was very homogenous. I was like the only Punjabi kid, only Sikh kid in school. So that was kind of like the starting point of when I think my parents really felt the need to impart the language onto my brother and I. And so they started teaching me how to read and write Punjabi, and then also, growing up in Sikhi, there's familiarity with Gurmukhi as well. So the script was always read and recited. And I always felt like, because I grew up in a city that was so homogenous and there weren't other Sikh Punjabis necessarily around, it inspired me more to just find that identity for myself. And so I think that love for Punjabi and Gurmukhi started from a young age. And I know that it can kind of go one of two ways, right? Like, either if you grow up in like a homogenous place, you either are drawn towards your heritage or sometimes you're like pulled away from it. But what I think also helped me was seeing other minority groups growing up around me. There was a really big Arab community, a really big Latinx community in London, and seeing them be so close to their heritage inspired me to stay close to mine. And as I was mentioning, like growing up in Sikhi, like all the metaphors that we're surrounded by are nature-based. Like all of the poetry is like just seeped in nature. And I think because of that, I felt like I wanted to bring that lushness into this project as well. Yeah, so I feel like this book really combines all of the things that I love. So it's a combination of language, of illustration, and of design. So yeah, with nature, there's just so many possibilities of poetics and just like aesthetic beauty that I feel like can be brought out. And it's also like nice to kind of carry that theme as well, because all of the nouns that are mentioned in the book are nature themed as well. So it creates that consistency and it allows readers to, you know, have that as a point of reference. If they're looking for like a natural or like a vocabulary kind of like treasure trove surrounded by nature, you can look at the book as a resource and kind of find it there. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope you can relish in Panjabi Garden. There are books you're able to purchase kind of outside the gallery at the front desk if you can. But I really feel like the book, when Keerat kind of approached, you know, us and thinking about how we're going to exhibit it, it was just so incredible to see that this was the work as a young South Asian artist is doing and for our community. And this kind of goes into my next question about kind of loss and tradition. And I think I find, maybe just for myself, that I am losing these traditions. I'm losing, you know, the language. I'm not speaking as much. And, you know, and with that being said, you know, with Punjabi generation and perhaps even for future generations, that the language is slowly being lost. And so along with the language, rituals, cultural traditions, and also facing loss, although, you know, multi-generational homes are still being shared with our elders and our grandparents and parents, but I wonder, you know, what's your message around kind of maintaining and retaining that language, and mostly Gurmukhi and Punjabi, but also for other cultures?
So yeah, I think that is something that I can relate to as well, because I think that growing up as a diasporic Punjabi, you know, sometimes you get laughed at for the way that you pronounce things, and like, I think there's also like a little bit of colonial reverberation that exists. And I know, again, like these are things that we hear so often, but, you know, as I get older, I feel like I see it more and more. But I do find myself interacting with certain people. And, you know, it's not like they do it maliciously. It's not their fault. But a lot of times, you know, I'll be speaking to them in Punjabi and they'll be like, oh, nahi, koi gal nahi, mainu angrezi aundi hai. And it's like, okay, well, that's nice, but you know, it's like there's almost like this shame that's associated with speaking Punjabi. And what I love though is that, for one, community, so like spaces like this are what inspire me. And it's just crazy because, like, even speaking with you, Savi, like hearing your love for Punjabi and that culture, and hearing from you that, you know, being in community spaces further inspires you as well. I think that spaces like these are super important, and that's one of the reasons why we brought Panjabi Garden to the Surrey Art Gallery, because we want people to see that Punjabi has been given a certain respect and a certain regard. And also, like, with all of these different art forms, I feel like that also makes it very digestible in a way. So like there's so many talented musicians nowadays that are diasporic as well, like they're born outside of Punjab. They're writing songs in Punjabi. They're creating, you know, just all kinds of different art, films even, that are just surrounded by this Punjabi theme. And I feel like those are things that we can bring into households and bring into families and expose children to as well, so that they can be inspired by it. And it's also something that they can enjoy in a different way, right? It's not just conversational. It's not just like they're having a conversation with their nana nani about their meal that day or something, right? Like, it goes beyond that. So I feel like the arts are super important as a way to transfer that knowledge.
Mm-hmm. And just to go back to the kind of, these safe conversations and spaces, I feel like, at least for me, that's just starting to happen for me. Like, I'm just coming back into my skin, and I've had many conversations with people kind of in this room about those opportunities that are being had for South Asian women. So, even though it's important to have these conversations, but I still feel like there's so much work that needs to be done. And, these spaces do exist, and I feel so grateful that they are now, and I feel proud that I'm also just finally getting into my own learning of Punjabi and my own culture, and making sure I don't want to lose my own traditions within that. So that kind of leads me into, you shared that you moved to India, or it's with your parents, to Patiala, and so I'm curious to know, during that time for you, did any of that time kind of inform your artistic practice, and what was your time like? So you were only there for a short time, I think, when you were 3 to 5?
So I did grades 3 and 4 in Punjab. So that whole, I guess, project was, my parents wanting to expose me and my brother to Punjab and to the language, and to be able to just immerse ourselves in the culture. So it was very much like a cultural immersion. And I think that it did a lot of things for me. Like, for one, like I was born and brought up in Canada, so going there was in a way isolating. So I feel like I really kind of became even more introverted, and I feel like that's where I did a lot of like artistic exploration. I started working with clay in India, because like there's like the tradition of gomyars making pots and all kinds of different things. And I would see that, and then I remember asking my dad, like, can you bring this mitti for me? And then he brought it for me, and then like I started making little pots and things, and then I actually, later in my life, I made that a part of my artistic practice as well. And yeah, I think just being surrounded by Punjabiyat in all of those different ways, like hearing the language, I think it just kind of became part of my DNA to express myself through that, artistically as well. Yeah.
That's interesting, yeah, because, I think when going back to India, I think our time changes and our experiences change when we go back. And I also went when I was 3 years old, and went to Chandigarh and did schooling there, and it was, back then it was awful, because I was like, oh my God, why are they hitting people? Like, it was such a learning curve, and I was like, I don't know where I was, and I had this thing around my hair, and I cut my gut, and it was just sad when I think about that. It just was so sad, and coming back into it, but
Hello. So yeah, like, I know that we talked about this a little bit, like, but for you, would you say that, do you think that had any influence on you, like in a positive way, as to like how you're relating back to your heritage now?
Yes, 100%. I feel like now it's taken so much time for me to actually like own that part of my own story, and that even though I feel like it was a little bit sad and kind of unfortunate, but it's also so powerful, like kind of reclaiming my own heritage now, and reclaiming my culture, and being like, yeah, like I am Punjabi, I'm South Asian, and it sounds so silly to say out loud, but it's like a very real life lived experience. I know many people have this kind of feeling too, and in BC and North America and whatnot, but it takes time to cultivate,
Yeah.
So
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah. And so with Panjabi Garden, I know it's blossomed to many forms, a learning book, to artworks, to poetry, and now an educational resource. And it's entered many homes, and I'm sure many homes in this room as well, where it's being treasured. I think I asked you this earlier on too, but what's the hope that you're wanting for your visitors and audiences to experience? What's the takeaway?
I would just want people to feel inspired to connect back to the language. Again, kind of connecting back to what I said earlier, dispelling the shame that's surrounded around speaking it or trying to speak it even, or even just looking at it as something that can be respected again. So, and even if you're not Punjabi, I would want people to see the way that heritage has been honored, and hopefully maybe even connect with their own heritage if they belong to a different background. And yeah, again, I just want it to be inspirational for people in, whatever they do, no matter what their discipline is, because I feel like you don't necessarily have to be in the arts to be inspired by the arts and bring it into your, your world, whatever that is. So yeah, because it is a different way of looking at language. Like we're literally taking the alphabet and giving it this ornate presentation aesthetically, and then also pairing it with. So I mean, I'm sure a few people in the crowd have seen the book, but basically the way that it is designed. So half of the book is like a series of short stories. So each letter of the alphabet is connected to a nature-themed noun, and then there's like a short story about it, and then that connects to the next noun and the next and the next. So it's like this circular story. So even that, like it's just a creative way of thinking about how to pair the letters, right? So again, I just want people to think outside the box, I suppose. Not necessarily, obviously be inspired to learn the language, but also think a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think to that note, it is quite purposely accessible. I think when you look at the book, it's not just for a Punjabi community, it's for everybody. And I think it's a learning of, how do we gain kind of knowledge around our own mother tongues. And I think that's, for me, is what's inspiring, and that's my own takeaway as well. If you know Keerat, you'll know that her love for pomegranates is very real. I see that you have a necklace that you've also created, yes. And you'll see some pomegranates kind of spread out in the space as well, and in the exhibition. And I think a lot of people have asked me throughout the last few weeks of, what is it? Like, what is the pomegranate? I don't know if you can share, kind of inspiration with that.
So I actually don't like pomegranates at all. I'm joking. That'd be really funny, though, if that was the reality. But yeah, it's actually not, like, super complicated. It's really just, I kind of have, like, an anecdotal attachment to it. Like, on trips to India, it was like that fruit that I wasn't able to access myself. Like, my parents had to, like, cut it for me because it's obviously, like, complicated. But it's always had, like, an aesthetic beauty to it, and I feel like it's been poeticized quite a bit in a lot of different cultures. And I feel like when something looks like that, like when it looks so beautiful, like there's so much that you can extract from it, and like there's so many different ways that you can spin narrative. And again, kind of like what I was saying about the exhibition, it's just one of those things that like propels your creativity and gets you thinking. And then it's also become like a symbol in my work, I think, and I want to continue to explore how I can add meaning to that, and create this idea of like palimpsest. So it's like the idea of adding layers of history to something. So yeah, I think it's a really beautiful fruit. It tastes amazing. And yeah, I think it's just so easy to create poetry from it.
And you'll see a lot of that in the exhibition space too. So please take your time kind of viewing that work and along with her poetry. I know we're like 5 minutes left, but last question. Multi-talented to say the least. I keep saying this to Keerat, and everyone at the gallery is like, multi-talented. She just does so much from, an architect, poet, now a jewelry maker. The list keeps going, and a singer. I know you have an amazing following of young South Asians who I think are inspired by your practice. And I'm just wondering, with you singing in scriptures, in the Gurdwaras, and now venues like the Commodore and many other venues in North America, how would you define language and the environment?
Yeah, so I think that no matter what it is that I'm involved in, I feel like it's just kind of all one thing, and it just manifests in different ways. So I feel like the concepts and the themes that I like to work around, which are, the treasures of our heritage as Sikhs, as Punjabis, I feel like through the music or through whatever it is that I'm doing, it's just like a different way of expressing it. And I think that's one of the things that I want to continue doing in my practice. Like, I don't want to ever just be complacent with the mediums that I work through now. I want to continue to develop that, and I feel like I just see it as a medium. Like I see every every little facet of my practice as a tool. And language, I think, has always been very central to whatever it is that I do. Even in my visual work, I see it as very illustrative because I do feel like it's centered around text, whether it's my own writing or whether it's Sikh scriptures and historical writing. Language has always been a really powerful part of that. And I think that that is another kind of like reason why Panjabi Garden, Panjabi Bagh came to be.
Personal question, has it, as you're just kind of talking out loud, but has it like healed you in some way? Has reading the kind of poetry and the scriptures and the Gurbani and talking to your parents and your community, is there a sense of kind of catharsis to it for yourself?
Definitely, yeah. Like, I think it connects a little bit to what I was saying about community. Like that has been, I think, like the warmest space for me to be in, because sometimes you'll be reading something or you'll be like interpreting something and you feel like you're alone in feeling that, but then speaking to other people who are just as passionate about that and they see the same kind of beauty in it, I feel like that just amplifies it so much more for me as well. So yeah, I would say cathartic for sure. And yeah, like I think healing in the sense that it allows you to like solidify your identity as well, the body of work that you create.
And I think to end on that note too is, I think what's also healing, and maybe healing is the wrong word for it, but that, a lot of people have said to us, or said to Keerat and during our promotions, everything, that you spelt it wrong, it's supposed to be the you, and it's like, well, no, like we're decolonizing the word itself. And so healing in that in itself right there is so powerful, and I commend you in doing that work. It's not easy. It's a lot of education that we're having to do, but it's important. It's important work. So thank you. Yeah.
And thanks for seeing that as well, and like the way that you brought Panjabi Garden to life. I feel like we need to give Savi a shout out for that, because I mean, 100%. Like it wouldn't have come to life the way that it did unless you had that perspective of the love for the language and the love for the heritage. So thank you.
That's very, very kind. Well, on to our next kind of segment. We are going to have a poetry reading by Keerat, and we'll kind of continue the performance and the event. So thank you all.
So what I'd like to do is, I actually started Panjabi Garden off with a few love letters to the language. So I wrote these poems in both Punjabi and English. And I'd like to sort of start off our performance in the same way as, presenting these love letters to the language and just creating that sacred space for the language. And each one is in Punjabi and in English, so I'll recite both. Punjabi bhariya dil, heart full of Punjabi. Kash mere do dil hunde, ek vich dukh, hanera, swai param, dusre vich sirf Punjabi. I wish I had two hearts, one to carry sorrow, darkness, self-doubt, the other to carry only Punjabi. Amar Jad, immortal root. ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਜ਼ੁਬਾਨ ਤੋਂ ਕਦੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਫੁੱਲ ਗਿਰ ਜਾਣ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਚੁੱਕ ਕੇ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਲਗਾ ਕੇ ਰੂਹ ਦੀ ਮਿੱਟੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾਲਣ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਾਣੀ, ਧੁੱਪ ਅਤੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਦੇਵੋ. If the flowers of Punjabi ever fall from your tongue, pick them up, plant them again, nurture them in your finest soil, feed them water, sunlight, and love. That one was specifically dedicated to, it was remembering all the times that I was made fun of for saying papa instead of baba. I'm sure a lot of us have experienced that. The whole idea is that we should, kind of let that go and restart our journey with that, and, we have to start somewhere. Like whatever we pronounce, however we pronounce it, it's fine. You just kind of have to go for it. And I feel like it's good because it's like a reminder that you have to restart it sometimes. Like you might say the thing incorrectly, but you can start it again, start that journey again with the language. Pigal, thaw. ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਬੋਲਦੀ ਹਾਂ ਹੀਰਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਕਣਾਂ ਭਰੀ ਭਾਫ ਮੇਰੇ ਮੂੰਹੋਂ ਨਿਕਲਦੀ ਹੈ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਆਲੇ ਦੁਆਲੇ ਦੀ ਸਰਦੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਿੱਘ ਭਰਦੀ ਹੈ When I speak Punjabi, clouds of diamond dust leave my mouth. Punjabi breathes warmth into the winter that surrounds me. Chand Pari Pasha, language full of moon. Chand Chanani ਦੀਆਂ ਰੇਸ਼ਮੀ ਕਿਰਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਮਾਂ ਬੋਲੀ ਦੇ ਨਕਸ਼ੇ ਬੁਣਦੀ ਹਾਂ. I use silver threads of moon silk to weave tapestries shaped like the maps of my mother tongue. And this last one is dedicated to all of us and all of our parents, everyone who kept Punjabi alive for us, despite being away from their motherland. And of course, it's entitled Panjabi Bagh, Panjabi Garden. ਪ੍ਰਵਾਸੀ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਪਿਆਰ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਵਿਦੇਸ਼ੀ ਧਰਤੀ ਤੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਵਿਦੇਸ਼ੀ ਪਾਣੀ ਪੀ ਕੇ ਵਿਦੇਸ਼ੀ ਹਵਾ ਦੇ ਸਾਹ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਵਿਦੇਸ਼ੀ ਫਲ ਖਾ ਕੇ ਅਤੇ ਵਿਦੇਸ਼ੀ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਬੋਲ ਕੇ ਵੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਬਾਗ ਨੂੰ ਖਿੜਿਆ ਰੱਖਿਆ Special love to the diaspora who moved to foreign land and drank foreign water and breathed foreign air and ate foreign fruit and spoke a foreign tongue and still managed to grow the Panjabi Garden. Thank you.
Thank you, Keerat, for that beautiful poetry reading and sharing your words with us and letting them land within your own garden and perspective, so thank you. I'd like to now introduce Inderpal Gill, who is a practicing lawyer and valuable exponent of the Dadi folk tradition. His musical journey began at a young age with the dole, a percussive instrument closely tied to Bhangra culture. The Dadi tradition is an intersection of Punjabi folklore and Sikh history. Common musical practices within this tradition include the playing of the sangri and dud instruments, the singing of ballads, and animated storytelling. Inderpal receives training and practices with the sangri throughout Sangat, learning from various teachers and through immersion and research into the archives. He aims to preserve this art form so that communities can continue to experience its unique blend of impassioned narrative and spirited music. So please welcome Inderpal to the stage.
So ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਜੀ ਆਇਆਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰੀ ਸਤਿ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ. Hello to everyone and love-filled ਸਤਿ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ to everyone. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the Surrey Art Gallery for this opportunity, and I'd like to thank my wife, Keerat, for allowing me this opportunity. One thing that you'll note when you see the exhibition, some of you may or may not have seen it yet, it's down the hall from here. It's a beautiful space, and in the background you hear music playing. So that music is the music associated with the Tadi Kala tradition. And in the Tadi Kala tradition, generally speaking, so it's a storytelling tradition, and it's native to both Punjabi folk culture and also to the Sikh context. So it's a long-standing tradition in our faith, whereby usually 3 or 4 people occupy the front space in front of the congregation, and they tell stories. And in telling the stories, they also sing music, and they sing ballads. In the Punjabi folk context, traditionally they sang folk tales, like Heer Ranja, Mirza Sahiba, and Sassi Punnu. Those are kind of like Romeo and Juliet, but from the subcontinent. Some of them predate Romeo and Juliet, a lot of them do. And then when that culture, of course, gets imported into the Sikhi context, the earliest sort of memory we have of Dardis in the Sikh faith are in Guru Har Gobind Maharaj's court, the sixth Guru of the Sikhs. And the Dardis told stories and sang songs to inspire what we call Biras in the warriors of the time and in the Sangat of the time, sort of like courage and bravery. They'd sing ballads about warriors. And in our faith, we have a long-standing tradition of martyrdom. We faced a lot of persecution and also a long-standing warrior tradition, and we sing ballads in relation to those people who, you know, gave up so much for our right to be here, and also to celebrate their sacrifices. And these are just some of the common themes that Dardis sort of talk about through their storytelling. And the music associated with it is usually, there's a sarangi, like this instrument, which I'll show you. And then there's a hand drum being played called the tard, which generally speaking goes with the sarangi. And when you go to the exhibition space, you'll hear sarangi and tard playing. It's one of the most recognizable sounds of Panjabi music and just like in the Sikh musical tradition. I'm gonna play two sort of melodies, or tarja as we call them in the Tardi Kala tradition, that we generally play. One's called Jode Di Kali, that's the first one, and then the second one I'll play is one that we just simply call Kabit, which is the name of the poetic meter of a lot of the different ballads that Tardi sing. But this, the melody I'm gonna play is sort of like what we play when we're singing a Kabit. So I hope you'll enjoy it, and thank you. That was what we call Jode Di Kali. This next one is called Kabit.
So I know that Inderpal thanked me, but I feel like I owe him thanks for connecting me to Tadi Kala in the way that he has. And I feel like anytime that I do hear sarangi, it's always filled me with sunshine. Like I just remember my days at Dixie Gurdwara hearing Tadis, and like it just makes me so happy. And so I'm so glad and like so thankful that we were able to make it a part of this exhibition as well. So my thanks to Inderpal. And what we're going to be presenting now is sort of a unique combination. So Inderpal will be accompanying me with sarangi, and we're actually going to be presenting a Panjabi Lokgeet piece, originally sung by the goddess Keerat Kaur. And actually the reason that I chose this song is because it mentions the first noun that is in the exhibition and in the book. So we have ura ut, but this is dachi, so it's like istri ut nu dachi kehne ne. So it's like that same theme. And the production actually of both of the pieces that we're going to be presenting, it's kind of like a combination of traditional melodies and vocals with new age production. So you'll hear some modern sounds mixed with traditional. So we'll begin.
ਡਾਚੀ ਵਾਲਿਆ ਮੋੜ ਮੁਹਾਰ ਵੇ ਸੋਹਣੀ ਵਾਲਿਆ ਲੈ ਚੱਲ ਨਾਲ ਵੇ ਡਾਚੀ ਵਾਲਿਆ ਮੋੜ ਮੁਹਾਰ ਵੇ ਸੋਹਣੀ ਵਾਲਿਆ ਲੈ ਚੱਲ ਨਾਲ ਵੇ ਦੇ ਗਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਟੱਲੀਆਂ ਵੇ ਮੈਂ ਪੀਰ ਮਨਾ ਬਣ ਚੱਲੀਆਂ ਤੇਰੀ ਡਾਚ ਦੀ ਸੋਹਣੀ ਚਾਲ ਵੇ ਹਾਏ ਤੇਰੀ ਡਾਚ ਦੀ ਸੋਹਣੀ ਚਾਲ ਵੇ ਹਾਏ ਡਾਚੀ ਵਾਲਿਆ ਮੋਰ ਮੁਹਾਰ ਵੇ ਥਲਾਨੂੰ ਚੀਰਨੀ ਵੇ ਮੈਂ ਪੀਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸੁਖਨੀ ਆਸ਼ੀਰਨੀ ਆ ਕੇ ਤੱਕ ਜਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਹਾਲ ਵੇ ਹਾਏ ਆ ਕੇ ਤੱਕ ਜਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਹਾਲ ਵੇ ਹਾਏ ਡਾਚੀ ਵਾਲਿਆ ਮੋੜ ਮੁਹਾਰ ਵੇ ਪੈਰ ਵੇ ਤੇਰੇ ਸਿਰ ਦੀ ਮੰਗਨੀਆਂ ਖੈਰ ਵੇ ਸਾਡੀ ਜਿੰਦੜੀ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਜ ਨਾ ਗਾਲ ਵੇ ਹਾਏ ਸਾਡੀ ਜਿੰਦੜੀ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਜ ਨਾ ਗਾਲ ਵੇ ਹਾਏ ਡਾਚੀ ਵਾਲਿਆ ਮੋੜ ਮੁਹਾਰ ਵੇ ਸੱਜ ਕੇ ਮੈਂ ਜਾਨੀਆਂ ਪੰਜਾਂ ਪੀਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਈ ਵੇ ਮਨਾਨੀਆਂ ਸੁੱਖਾਂ ਸੁਖਨੀਆਂ ਤੇਰੀਆਂ ਲਾਲ ਵੇ ਹਾਏ ਸੁੱਖਾਂ ਸੁਖਨੀਆਂ ਤੇਰੀਆਂ ਲਾਲ ਵੇ ਹਾਏ ਡਾਚੀ ਵਾਲਿਆ ਮੋੜ ਮੁਹਾਰ ਵੇ ਡਾਚੀ ਵਾਲਿਆ ਮੋੜ ਮੁਹਾਰ ਵੇ ਸੋਹਣੀ ਵਾਲਿਆ ਲੈ ਚੱਲ ਨਾਲ सोने वालिया ले चल नाल वे हाय सोनी वालिया ले चल नाल वे हाय सोनी वालिया ले चल नाल वे. Thank you. So this next piece, it's not necessarily inspired by nature, but it is heavily inspired by the tradition of writing and letter writing. And again, it's like playing on themes of love and longing. And again, it was originally sung by the goddess, Surinder Kaur. I feel like ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਇੰਨੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਦੇਣ ਹੈ Panjabi ਲੋਕ ਗੀਤ 'ਚ, and I want to just honor her with all of these treasures and bringing them, into today's world. So again, you will hear very new age production with this one, a little bit less traditional, but the sound is still very much old world. खत आया सोने सजना दा कदे रखनिया कदे पढ़निया ना लिखिया तरीका आउण दिया ना लिखिया तरीका आउण दिया वे मैं पल पल कोठे चढ़निया खत आया सोने सजना दा हुण रूप ना कजियार रहिंदा नी अंग अंग चों डुल डुल पैंदा नी हुण रूप ना कजियार रहिंदा नी अंग अंग चों डुल डुल पैंदा नी एह दिल इक थां ना बहंदा नी इनू मुड़ मुड़ पज पज फड़निया खत आया सोने सजना दा कदे रखनिया कदे पढ़निया खत आया सोने सजना दा कुछ मण के परो के गानी देनी मैं बरखा सबरे जवानी दे कुछ मण के परो के गानी देनी मैं बरखा सबरे जवानी दे हाय जवानी दे जद अथरू डिगण दीवानी दे नी मैं एवें खिज खिज सड़निया खत आया सोने सजना दा कदे रखनिया कदे पढ़निया खत आया सोने सजना दा हर गल विच गल नू लभनिया गल दिल दी दिल विच रखनिया हर गल विच गल नू लभनिया गल दिल दी दिल विच रखनिया वे मैं पैड़ी जाकर सब दी हाँ ना बुझनिया ना सड़निया खत आया सोने सजना दा कदे रखनिया कदे पढ़निया ना लिखिया तरीका आउण दिया ना लिखिया तरीका आउण दिया वे मैं पल पल कोठे चढ़नी हते आया सोने सजना दा. Thank you.
Hi, Keerat.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. My name is Simranpreet. I'm also an artist. Amazing talk. Thank you so much for everything. I wanted to ask you, because language is also like a big part of my work, and like a big question that comes up is that of translation. And I'm really interested in what your sort of process to do with translating or not translating, or sort of, I don't know, sometimes I decide that the best way is to not translate and to instead write something completely different. So, yeah.
I like that question because I think that with translation, especially with a language like Panjabi, like it is very different from the way that it's constructed from English, like where verbs come and nouns come in a sentence, it's very different. And then on top of that, there's the layer of like different adages and sayings and poetics that sound great in Punjabi and they just sound really weird in English. So I came across that a lot, and I feel like in those instances, I wouldn't, especially with the book and also the didactics, like I wasn't like too caught up with translating word for word. Like I really tried to translate essence, and that's usually where I go. So if that means like omitting certain words that were in the original Punjabi, I will do that. Because I feel like translating is really about the essence. I feel like transliterating is, you know, more mathematical, whereas I think translating for me has always been about the essence. And I mean, there is the argument that you can translate for exact meaning as well. But when it comes to something like a book where you want the words to flow, you don't want things to sound like awkward. Yeah, for me, it was just really about the essence and like trying to understand what the Punjabi message is and doing whatever I have to do to convey that using English sayings and vocab. Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing performance.
Thank you.
And same goes for you, Inderpal. Thank you so much for introducing us to that. Before I ask you my question, I'll have to give you a context about it.
Sure.
I come from India, but not from Punjab.
Okay.
I come from Haryana, which is a Hindu family, if we have to talk culture-wise.
Yeah.
But since I have been having any recollection of my growing up, I have this such strong affinity towards Punjab and its language कि जब मैं पंजाबी बोलती हूँ किसी को पता नहीं लगता कि मैं पंजाब तो हैगी हाँ कि नहीं हैगी हाँ. Right? So that's what I get to know about myself, and people tell me a lot. So, and I have never been able to figure out why is that. Like when you were performing, I had goosebumps and tears so many times, and I had no explanation for it, right? So my question to you is, when you were working on Panjabi Bagh, when you were curating, articulating whatever you have presented, you must have went into history and, you know, as much as you can go into past. Did you come across any stories like that? Anything that is relevant to like my experience or what I shared, like anything that you can shed light on?
Thank you so much for the context. That was such a beautiful context. Yeah, and thank you for your kind words as well. When I was researching Panjabi Garden and creating Panjabi Garden, I think the feeling that is closest to what you described that I came across was kind of surprising to me, actually, but there were, you know, like a few friends and family members that I shared some of the snippets with and like the in-progress stuff. And I think what really took me aback was when my non-Punjabi friends would look at some of the things and it would like immediately make sense to them. I think that connects back to like, again, what I was saying about how you get so entrenched in your feeling about the thing. You think that you're the only one who feels that, but it's really a collective energy. And I feel like that collective beauty, or whatever you want to call it, like I feel like art is really a channel for it. And so I think that there's a lot of different cultures and different people who could listen to a Punjabi song or read a Punjabi poem and feel those same goosebumps. So I've always thought of it as like, I know it sounds really esoteric, but I do appreciate the spiritual aspect of it. I do think that it's the energy of beauty, and the book or the songs and the poetry, they're just a channel for it. And that's how I've always understood it. Even if I'm like experiencing work from other cultures and I get that same feeling, like I've always loved doing that. I love listening to music from different cultures and experiencing art and languages. I feel like they're just different vehicles for that same like beautiful energy. Yeah, I'm not sure if that explains it, but that's kind of my feeling. But yeah, thank you for the question.
Hi, Keerat. My name is Imrose, and I have two questions, actually. First of all, it's so heartwarming to see the Punjabiyat being carried forward in print as well, too. I feel like after 90s, we have sort of lost our trajectory, especially from print-wise. And also, you touched a little bit on how Punjabiyat is sort of growing in the diaspora as well, too. But I would like to hear a more detailed version, I guess, from you. So how do you see like Punjabiyat growing in diaspora, especially when we say Punjabi, we think of Punjab in India, but then there's Punjab on the other side as well, too. But now we have Punjabis from all around the world, especially those two sides in all around the world. How do you see Punjabiyat growing in the diaspora, especially from Punjabi Bagh context? And second question is, what is your favorite Punjabi word?
Okay, favorite Punjabi word. I feel like I'm always saying Punjabi words and thinking about like what sounds cool. I'm gonna have to think about that one as I give the first answer. But yeah, thank you for your question, Imrose. I know you from the internet, so it's very nice to meet you in real life. Yeah, so the thing that I think has brought a lot of Punjabiyat, it's like izzat again, to be honest, is music. Because I feel like there's so many different artists from like Pakistani Punjab, Punjab, Canada Punjab, like the diaspora everywhere. They're creating these sounds that are like, everyone can enjoy them, everyone can like, sway to them. But they're in Punjabi. And so I think like, I say that from my own perspective. I feel like, listening to different artists these days who are like, our generation, they grew up like we did, seeing them write songs in Punjabi and like sing Punjabi, like I'll hear like a cool Punjabi word in the lyrics and like I'll Google it and I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that was a thing. And yeah, so for me, it's definitely been music. And like I want to, through Panjabi Garden and like, through what we did today, I want it to be like an all-encompassing thing. So like bringing together music, visuals, discussion, like all of that, just kind of, making it cool again to like know Punjabi and be Punjabi. And I know that like Savi, you mentioned this as well, for a lot of people, it just sounds really redundant. Like they don't understand. They're like, what's the big deal? Like no one cares. That's cool. Like you're Punjabi, cute. But like when you grew up in a place where you had to fight for it, it becomes like something that you're proud of. And so I think that not everyone necessarily has that perspective, but it's not the norm for all of us, and it hasn't been for me in a lot of ways. It has in a lot of ways also, like being in Punjab, living there, being around Punjabis all the time. But yeah, I feel like I'm like rambling, but short answer, I feel like for me it's been music. Music has really done that for me, and like modern day artists. Favorite Punjabi word? I don't know, so much pressure. I will think about it and I'll let you know. Tapusi, yeah, I have mentioned that, tapusi. It basically means like tapusi amarnia, like jumping around, yeah.
Hi, Keerat.
Hello.
I have a personal question from early stage of your life. So you said that your parents imparted Punjabi to you and your brother. So when you came out of your house and got mixed up with the mainstream Canada, how was it difficult for you to resolve that clash, mixing up with the peers and stuff?
For sure, it was very weird. It was uncomfortable as well. And I think that was a journey as well. Like I didn't walk out of the door as being like, oh, I'm a proud Punjabi, you know, in this like very homogenous city. It wasn't like that at all. I do thank my parents though, because I feel like they tried to always make it cool to like be connected to Sikhi and Punjabi. And I do thank my dad a lot because he introduced me to the poetics of Sikhi, obviously Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and also specifically Suraj Prakash Granth, which is like a historical fiction poetic take on Sikh history. And basically like the metaphors in that writing are just like, they're so beautiful and so vivid that, you know, when you read it, you're just like, you want to keep reading it. And so that was something that I really connected with. So I feel like that's something that can really help a lot of people like find the thing that you like, whether it's music or writing or whatever it is, and see what's out there in Punjabi in that field and experience it that way. And then that'll keep you connected to it and that'll make it interesting and it won't feel forced. Because I feel like sometimes we try to use the same formula for everyone, but everyone connects to things differently. So I feel like you kind of just have to find your medium. For me, it was definitely through Sikhi, I think, that I was like more connected to Punjabiyat. Yeah. Thank you.
Just had a question about, I was just thinking about how language evolves. Some words, either they change meaning or they go out of use. I have the book, I haven't read it yet. So just wondering, was there any of that that you came across where, did you choose to use words that are not in use, old Punjabi, or were you going with current day Punjabi?
For sure, yeah. I think generally I went with current day Punjabi, the way that it's written in most texts. Obviously the way that we speak it is very different based on where you're from. My parents are from the Malwa region of Punjab, so my Punjabi is a little bit different than like the Doaba region or the Majha region. But generally written Punjabi is relatively standard, so I kind of went with that for the book. And for certain words and like certain things, like for example, nganga and nyanya are like the pariah letters of Punjabi. I was speaking with Pradeep about this and like how, you know, when you're going through the alphabet, it's like you'll have the letter and then a noun and then you'll go to nganga and then you'll just be like kali, so like you won't have a word for it. Because over time those have become kind of outdated, right? But what I tried to do is actually bring in some old school words that nowadays are spelt differently, but originally they were spelt with those pariah letters. Like for example, hing. It doesn't start with nganga, but it ends with nganga. I know I'm getting kind of technical, but yeah. So I did use some like things that are a little bit more outdated. I wanted to, you know, shed light on that, include that. But generally with the writing, I sort of kept it standard, you know, the type of writing that I've read in books and things. And I think the other thing that's related to that is that a lot of us speak Punjabi, but we don't necessarily know the blueprint of it. That was another reason why I wanted to come out with the book, because that'll help people understand why they pronounce things certain ways, right? Like for example, gar and gar are two different things. Punjabi's tonal, so there's so many like little subtleties that are like not necessarily understood unless you kind of see it on paper. So yeah, I wanted to create like a roadmap for people as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Savi. Keerat, mad respect for you for, my name is Keerat Kaur. Mad respect for you for kind of injecting the pride back into being Panjabi. Growing up the same as you, it was almost embarrassing being Punjabi. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
But I do have a question for your husband, actually.
Oh yeah,
if that's
sure.
okay.
Here.
Just the sarangi and the tad were always, to me, growing up, reserved for elders. And, you know, at the Gurdwara you'd see it. Why did you choose the sarangi and the tad? What inspired you? How did you learn it? When did you start to learn it? And did you two meet through the arts? Thank you.
Thank you, Keerat Kaur, for your message. My connection with the sarangi and Tad and with Tardi Kala generally, I owe it all to my father. And forgive me, I do feel a bit of a lump in my throat. I lost my father just over a year ago. But he tied me to the Tardi Kala tradition because he was a lover of this art. And ever since I could remember, since I was a kid, the Tardi Singhs would come to our house. And, you know, like they'd sing Vara, they'd tell stories, we'd sit, we'd have dinner together. And that's how I happened upon this instrument. That's how I became immersed in this tradition. And that's how I carry it forward. And, you know, when he was around, it was very much like, you know, he inspired me. But now it's like, it's not just because I love it, it's because also it's a way for me to remember him and be close to him. So that's on a very personal level. Keerat and I did meet through the arts in about, I'd say like in the mid-2010s. I began taking the sarangi more seriously and posting stuff on Instagram. And then eventually like we met just through the art scene. And I think what it's something that she really appreciates as well, and I'm lucky in that sense that I have a partner who also appreciates this kala, because this kala is something that is in a lot of ways underappreciated. It's very niche. Not a lot of people are into it. We see Tardi Singhs at the Gurdwara all the time. They're usually the last people up. And like, you know, the Darbar Hall usually clears out, and like only the people who really want to listen are still there. But it's such an integral and important part of our history as both Sikhs and also as Punjabi people. As I explained earlier, it's a tradition that is shared by both the Punjabi culture and sort of the Sikh culture. And so yeah, I'm not sure if I went on too much of a tangent, if I missed anything. But yeah, that's...
That was very beautiful and eloquent, and it really shows the kind of love on the stage between you both. So this kind of concludes our event. I hope today inspires our audiences and visitors as you're kind of experiencing Panjabi Garden and, you know, looking inside the book, that you too can also relish in your own language and your own heritage. And so I encourage you to purchase the book, to delve into it, to read it with your elders, your whoever, and start to engage with it in that way, and especially with the visual art and poetry that Keerat has shared. So thank you all for joining today, and a special thank yous and to the end of the evening, but I just want to send a thank you note to Zoe. I don't know if she's here, but she is our event coordinator for the night, so thank you, Zoe, and our new cultural assistant, along with our BSW workers, our techs, our volunteers, front of house staff, Reese as well, and to you all for joining us today. And Pardeep, I need to send you a very special note to you. He's been taking our photographs for the gallery for at least over 5 years now, and each time he has captured such beautiful images, and it's been such a lovely time to work with him during Keerat's exhibition. So really thank you, Pardeep. And Jamil, who's our videographer, thank you so much for taking the content today. And to you all, thank you so much for coming in. And we have another event with Keerat February 11th, a Punjabi tour in Punjabi, so please join us as well. And thank you so much, Keerat, for sharing your passion with Punjabi language, the garden, the lushness, the poetry, everything. It's been such a pleasure, so thank you.
So much. And I know we've done our thanks, but honestly, thanks to everyone who came out today. Like, is tarah lagda hai jiਵੇਂ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਇਕੱਠਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ. Like, it just feels so intimate, and I feel like this is an extension of Panjabi Bagh as well, like us just gathering here. So thank you guys for giving yourselves that and giving me that as well. Thank you.
And just a note, I believe that the books are sold out here, so thank you all. But is there a space you can share where people can get the books?
Yeah, so the best place to get the book right now is, for Canadians, it's Barnes & Noble online. So keeratkaur.ca/books. You can see all the links to the best places to get the book based on where you are. Barnes & Noble has really quick shipping. That's why I recommended them. And just to give like a quick thing about the book, if you aren't familiar with it, it's, as Savi was saying, it's for everyone. So everything is, so basically as long as you know English, you can follow the book. Everything is translated. Some things are transliterated where necessary. And it is for all levels of understanding of Gurmukhi and Punjabi. So if you don't know anything, you can learn from it. And if you do know Punjabi really well, there's that aspect of the short stories that I was talking about that's kind of interesting with the connections between the nouns. So yeah, best place to look for the book is keeratkaur.ca/books.
Great, thank you. And enjoy the rest of the night.